The rain was a dark veil over the lone road that night. I remember the feeling of exhaustion after a long day, the headlights of my car cutting through the darkness, and the soft music on the radio that was trying to keep me awake. I never imagined that the sharp turn, followed by that dry thud and the sound of twisted metal, would be the prelude to a nightmare that haunts me to this day. In the other car, amidst the deployed airbags, was him, a clown. Not a cheap Halloween costume, but a being with makeup smeared by the rain, a grotesque smile painted on his lips, and eyes that seemed to gleam with an inexplicable malice. After the initial confusion, the police questions, and the exchange of insurance information, he simply vanished. No one seemed to pay much attention to the fact that the person in the other car was dressed as a clown on a Tuesday night. For me, it was a bizarre detail, a strange fragment amidst the chaos of the accident. But the real disturbance began when I got home. First, there were the small incidents. A large, colorful footprint on my rug. The sound of muffled laughter coming from the garden in the dead of night. At first, I tried to rationalize, to convince myself that they were just coincidences, the post-accident stress playing tricks on me. But then, things escalated. Flowers from my garden would appear in the morning with their petals torn off and arranged in a macabre smile on my doorstep. I found a red balloon tied to my car with a scribbled note, "We're not done playing yet." That note, with its childish and sinister handwriting, sent a chill down my spine. I started to become certain the clown from the accident was following me. But why? I didn't know him. I had never seen him before that night. The police didn't take me seriously. They said it was probably someone trying to scare me, maybe even some kind of bad Halloween prank that was coming up. However, the prank became increasingly personal and terrifying. I started seeing flashes of brightly colored clothing in the corners of my eyes, hearing the unmistakable sound of jingles in the silence of my house. One night, I woke up with the feeling of being watched and found, scribbled in red lipstick on my bathroom mirror, the phrase, "You look funny when you're scared." Panic paralyzed me. I was being invaded, not just physically, but psychologically. That clown, whoever he was infiltrating my life, feeding a paralyzing terror. A quote that has never left my head since then is from Stephen King. "We all float down here." That phrase, which refers to a deep childhood fear, perfectly embodied what I was feeling. It was as if a shadow from my childhood, something grotesque and repulsive, had returned to torment me. I started having vivid nightmares, where that clown would emerge from the shadows, his smile widening into a grimace of pure terror. In some dreams, he was driving the other car, and the crash would repeat incessantly, like a vicious cycle of dread. Paranoia set in completely. I looked at every face on the street, searching for traces of that pale makeup, that sinister smile. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow seemed to hide the figure of that grotesque being. I was living in my own personal horror movie, where the villain was a colorful aberration that seemed to have come straight out of a nightmare. Then, one night, I was driving home from work in a torrential downpour. The windshield wipers struggled to clear the water that blurred my vision. Suddenly, in the rearview mirror, I saw him. He was standing by the side of the road, under the dim light of a street lamp, wearing the same bizarre, colorful clothes from the night of the accident. His smile seemed even wider, and his eyes gleamed with a cold, disturbing intensity. Fear washed over me like an icy wave. I sped up, trying to leave him behind, but he simply started running, keeping pace with my car with surprising speed. The chase lasted what felt like an eternity. He ran, laughed hysterically, and gestured as if he were enjoying my terror. In a moment of desperation, I tried to swerve, but I lost control of the car and spun on the road, coming to a sudden stop on the shoulder. When I finally regained consciousness, I looked in the rearview mirror. He was there, standing a few feet from my car, just watching. Slowly, he raised his hand and waved, a macabre smile lighting up his pale face in the rain. And then he turned and disappeared into the darkness of the night, leaving no trace. I never saw him again, but the image of that clown in the rearview mirror, that terrifying smile, and the final wave remain etched in my mind. Even today, when I drive at night and see a figure on the side of the road, my heart races. I keep wondering who that clown was, what he wanted, and why he chose me for his macabre game. Sometimes, in the silence of the night, I still hear the echo of that disturbing laughter. Do you really think this is just a story? Take a good look at your rearview mirror the next time you're alone on the road. Maybe you'll discover you're not so alone after all. And if you enjoyed this story and want more chills like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Who knows what else lurks in the shadows? They called him Magnifico, but the name tasted like ash in the mouths of those who truly witnessed his art. His posters plastered every lamppost in the forgotten towns our circus dared to visit, promising wonders beyond imagination. And for a time, he delivered. But behind the glittering facade of sequins and the booming laughter that echoed through the big top, a darkness brewed, a secret woven into the very fabric of his illusions. Magnifico was more than just a magician. He was a conjurer of nightmares, and the line between his tricks and reality was paper thin, constantly threatening to tear. Our small, struggling circus, the wonders of the world, was Magnifico's last refuge. He arrived one rainy evening, a gaunt figure with eyes that held both an ancient sadness and a spark of something wicked. The ringmaster, desperate for any act that could pull in a crowd, took him in without asking too many questions. Magnifico didn't demand much. A secluded tent, an assistant who never spoke, and an unwavering silence before and after his performances. His initial shows were captivating, dazzling displays of classic magic, elevated by a theatrical flair that left audiences spellbound. But then, things started to shift, subtly at first. A disappearing act would leave a lingering scent of sulfur in the air. A dove released from a cage might briefly transform into a grotesque, shadowy creature before fluttering away. The audience, initially amused, began to feel a creeping unease. Magnifico's assistant was as enigmatic as the magician himself. He was a tall, silent man, always cloaked in shadows, his face perpetually hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He moved with an unnerving stillness, his presence a constant, unsettling backdrop to Magnifico's flamboyant performances. Whispers circulated among the circus folk. Some said he was mute, others that he was something far more sinister, bound to Magnifico by a dark pact. No one dared to approach him, and he seemed to communicate with the magician through silent gestures and knowing glances. The true horror began during Magnifico's signature illusion, the vanishing woman. A volunteer from the audience, always someone young and full of life, would step into a large, ornate cabinet. With a flourish and a dramatic incantation, Magnifico would slam the doors shut. Moments later, when he dramatically reopened them, the volunteer would be gone, vanished into thin air. The crowd would erupt in applause, thrilled by the spectacle. But then, the disappearances started to become permanent. The first few times, it was dismissed as the volunteers changing their minds, slipping away after the show. But when a week passed with no sign of them, well, in Tautillan, a cold fear began to grip the circus. One of the missing women was a young girl named Lily, who had come to the show with her parents, her eyes wide with wonder. Her mother, frantic with worry, pleaded with the ringmaster, who initially brushed it off as teenage rebellion. But the other performers, their faces pale and drawn, knew something was terribly wrong. They had started noticing strange occurrences during Magnifico's act, fleeting glimpses of terror on the volunteers' faces just before they entered the cabinet. Faint screams muffled behind the closed doors. The climax came one fateful night during Magnifico's performance of the Razor Box. This illusion involved placing the silent assistant inside a large box and then piercing it with numerous gleaming blades. The audience gasped as each blade was thrust through the box, seemingly impaling the figure inside. But this time, when Magnifico pulled the blades out and opened the box, the assistant was gone. In his place lay a single, bloodied playing card, the Queen of Spades. A collective gasp swept through the audience, a mixture of horror and disbelief. The ringmaster, his face ashen, ordered the show to stop. That night, the circus tent was filled with a palpable tension. The other performers, fueled by a mixture of fear and a desperate need for answers, decided to investigate Magnifico's tent. They found it unlocked, the interior shrouded in an unsettling stillness. The air was thick with the smell of dust, old velvet, and something else. Something metallic and faintly sweet. In the center of the tent stood the vanishing woman cabinet. Hesitantly, they opened it. The interior was not empty. Scratched into the wood were desperate pleas for help, along with a chilling drawing of a figure with a grotesque, painted smile. Unmistakably Magnifico. And then they found it, hidden beneath a false bottom. A collection of personal belongings. A locket with Lily's picture. A scarf belonging to another missing volunteer. The horrifying truth became clear. Magnifico's illusions were not tricks. They were real disappearances. And the cabinet was not a prop, but a portal to somewhere unknown. Or perhaps something far more sinister. Just then, the silent assistant emerged from the shadows, his face finally visible in the dim light of a flickering lantern. His eyes were hollow, filled with an ancient sorrow, and his lips moved for the first time anyone could remember. His voice was a raspy whisper, like the rustling of dry leaves. "He feeds on their wonder," he croaked. pointing a trembling finger towards the now ominously silent center ring. Their belief, it gives him power. As the performers turned towards the ring, the familiar strains of the circus organ began to play, a distorted, melancholic melody. In the center of the ring stood Magnifico, bathed in a single spotlight. His smile was wider than ever, a terrifying rictus that stretched across his pale face. In his hands, he held a shimmering, ethereal form, the faint outline of a young woman struggling silently. The air crackled with an unnatural energy. "You doubted my magic?" Magnifico's voice boomed through the tent. No longer the suave tone of a performer, but something cold and inhuman. "Tonight, you will all witness my greatest illusion." The performers, frozen in terror, could only watch as Magnifico raised his hands, and the ethereal figure began to fade, merging with the shadows of the tent. A collective scream, not from the phantom, but from the audience members who had stayed behind, echoed through the night. Those who remained claimed they saw fleeting glimpses of the missing people, trapped within Magnifico's illusions, their faces contorted in silent agony. Magnifico, empowered by their fear and belief, seemed to grow stronger, his eyes burning with an unholy light. The fate of Magnifico and his haunted circus remains a chilling local legend in the forgotten corners of the American Midwest. Some say that on moonless nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint, distorted melody of the circus organ and the echoes of terrified screams carried on the wind. They say the line between illusion and reality blurred completely that night, and that Magnifico's final trick was making his audience believe in something truly horrifying. Do you ever feel like the magic you see might be more than just a trick? And are you sure the wonders you witness don't have a dark price? If this story made you question the reality behind the spectacle, then perhaps you should subscribe. You never know what illusions might come to life next.
If you enjoyed this creepy story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more chilling tales every week. Stay spooky!